Welcome to USMNT Weekly on Total Soccer Show, our regular look at the national team. And on this episode, we are dissecting the preliminary Gold Cup roster that dropped earlier this week. We're looking at the missing big names, the fringe players who may deserve a shot, and we'll look at how we see things shaping out this summer. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's Mr. Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. That was a lovely introduction in which you did a majestic job of keeping the derision and scorn and confusion out of your voice when you said 60-player provisional roster. Nicely done by you.
Well, I didn't actually say 60-player provisional roster, Taylor, but you have very much preceded a conversation topic that will be coming up very shortly on this here podcast.
I had a feeling.
It should be 80 people, that's what I'm saying. Why not make it 90?
Why stop there?
Why make it...
The whole country.
I think the 300 million preliminary roster, I think, is what we should have at this point. It's only fair to everybody, including, but not limited to, Joe Lowery. Hello, Joe.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. In fact, why don't we just stop doing the international divides at all and just get everybody on a list and do something with that? I think that feels right.
Joe wants everyone on a list. That's the major takeaway that we should have from this episode.
Oh boy. Graham Ruthven, how are you, sir? Would you like to be on a list?
Yeah, sure, Ryan. Not entirely sure how to respond to that. I think this list should be... I know that FIFA are going to expand the World Cup to 64 teams for the 2030 World Cup, so you need at least 3 times the number of teams in a World Cup for your preliminary roster. So what's that, like 190, 194 or something? 192? 192 player roster is what we should be aiming for, at least. I would say.
Is that 64 World Cup thing real?
Well, looks like it after Congress last week. Yep.
Graham?
Yep. It's Joe. It's taking place in 6 countries in 3 different continents.
What?
Oh,
can we
awesome.
Stop international soccer now? Can we stop it now before this happens, please? Who's with me? No? Just me? Fine.
Not until we get to the prelim roster, obviously. Then we can stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, instead of doing that, I've made a list of famous Grahams. I'm going to say Graham Ruthven is 6th on the list right now.
Ooh,
all right, let's
top
do it.
6.
We've got the phone guy.
Alexander Graham Bell, he's number 1. And then in no particular order,
here.
Graham Potter, Graham Souness, Graham Lasso, Graham Cracker, and then Graham Ruthven.
Oh,
Graham Cracker, number 1, yeah.
Yeah. Good call.
Thank you.
Great food. Just top tier.
I'm sure there's some other ones out there. There has to be an actor, but I couldn't think of a Graham off the top of my head. Graham Clooney. That's George Clooney's real name.
Oh, yeah.
That's
GC.
the one with the real talent.
Yes. yes.
It's like the Culkins.
The cousin who does all the voiceover work, yes.
Graham Norton? Does he count?
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
There you go, yeah.
I'll take him.
He's an actor.
So does that bump Graham to 7th? Just keep
Damn
that.
it!
Out of the big 6. Brutal.
All right, attempting to put the train back on the tracks here. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you'll find our bonus content, bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server. All the cool kids are hanging out there. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, the best way to support this endeavor. Please and a thank you. Let's get to it. USMNT Weekly, here we go. It's the Gold Cup. It's one of the tournaments happening this summer, which is the 18th edition of the Gold Cup. It's going to be in 14 venues across the US and Canada. Mexico, of course, the reigning champ from 2023 with 9 titles to the US's 7. The US, Taylor, facing our friends Trinidad and Tobago, our closest allies and guest debutant Saudi Arabia, and Haiti in the group stages of this tournament. Taylor, before we get into the prelim roster, the aforementioned 265,000-player prelim roster, what's your sentiment going into this summer with this tournament? How are your excitement levels for it? I presumably, this is a great showcase for Mauricio Pochettino and a great, grounding potentially for the team for next summer. But how are you feeling? Are you feeling like it's a thing you want to watch?
If I don't say anything, will you just keep going with that question and get higher pitched and slower? I mean, I think your question indicates my level of enthusiasm for this competition. Generally speaking, I think the Gold Cup is one that is looked upon as the U.S. should be in the final against Mexico, and if they're not, something has gone wrong. They should blow away their group stage opposition. If they don't, something has gone wrong. And oftentimes we get them switching the roster after the group stage because once you're into the knockout rounds, you want that kind of knockout round competition experience, so you bring in some more veteran players. And so it always ends up feeling like a bit of a mixed bag, and it has been. I think we did the quiz on the Patreon recently with you asking us about a Gold Cup squad that I genuinely did not remember at all. So historically it has fallen down in significance for me. This one, though, to a point you made, is more exciting because there's such a limited window between now and the World Cup, and because results have been poor under Pochettino so far. But we haven't seen a full team necessarily. We won't see that this summer because we have some players missing. But it is an opportunity for him to get a team together, win some knockout games, and remind everybody that he is a good coach and the U.S. has plenty of talent. So in that way, I am more enthusiastic nervous about this tournament than I usually am.
Okay. Joe, how are you feeling about it? Obviously, we've got some Club World Cup overlap in the US this summer as well. How are you feeling about that and the lead-in?
Yeah, I'm not feeling especially enthusiastic about the Gold Cup, to be honest, but that's also kind of been my state on the USMNT since the last World Cup. In a lot of ways, it doesn't seem like this group has taken steps forward at all, really. If anything, it seems like they've gone backwards after Copa America and some of the challenges in March under Mauricio Pochettino. I think the U.S. is going to do very well in the Gold Cup because the teams they're playing are not very good until you get to the knockout rounds. I am also interested in what comes before the World Cup, though, and that is friendlies against Switzerland and Turkey. Those are going to be, in all likelihood, two of the three best teams the U.S. plays this summer, assuming they get a knockout round game against Canada, maybe, or Mexico in this competition. Canada might well be the favorites right now to win the Gold Cup. But those games are going to be really interesting, and we're going to start learning a lot more about what Pochettino thinks of his players over the next 6 weeks or so, thinking about the fact that the U.S. roster for this summer is supposed to drop tomorrow, as we're recording on Wednesday, May 21st. So we're going to get a really quick look at what Pochettino wants. And he said in an interview yesterday, Mauricio Pochettino, that the players we see in these friendlies are likely going to be the players that we see in the Gold Cup. So we're going to start to get a very, very quick look at who Pochettino really wants to ride with while the Club World Cup is going on. And Ron, I'm glad you mentioned that because that has a direct impact on the U.S.'s roster. No Gio Reyna called in. He's still technically a Borussia Dortmund player, although there's more nuance there that maybe we'll get to shortly. No Tim Weah, no Weston McKennie. Those clubs, Juventus and Borussia Dortmund, are both in the Club World Cup, and FIFA has given priority to the club teams over the national teams this summer. Club teams get to retain their players. That also means no Seattle Sounders players, not that there was a real likelihood there. No Inter Miami players, maybe no LAFC players, not that that's going to be a huge problem. Interestingly enough, no Club America players. If they beat LAFC on that match in the 31st of May, LAFC would need to win to have their players off the books as well for this international window. But maybe no Alejandro Zendejas if Club America progress, which they would be favored to do so. So it's a weird summer. Like the U.S. have games, they're about to announce a roster. They're not really making progress. They're not going to be quite at full strength, but they'll be pretty close, all things considered. I'm a sucker for soccer games. I'm a sucker to watch these U.S. games. So I will still get excited about them, but my general feeling on the U.S. right now is not especially positive.
Yeah, I think the fact that it is a Gold Cup and we're not looking at World Cup qualifiers this summer, or if the Nations League was this summer and we had the full-strength US team with players like, most notably, Wes McKennie and Tim Weah. If that was a scenario, I think I wouldn't have a huge amount of enthusiasm for that situation because, quite frankly, I am at this moment just kind of bored of watching the US coming out of that March window. But because there is that scope for a little bit of experimentation, there is that possibility that we'll maybe get a Seb Berhalter coming into this team or an Alex Freeman coming into this team. We're going to get a genuine look at those players or some of those players in a competitive setting. That does kind of pick up my enthusiasm a little bit because this is a team that needs solutions. Like let's be honest about this. What the US has been trying since the last World Cup hasn't been working. It felt like the March window was a real low, a real nadir for this team. So I am very much in the mood for some experimentation, and I'm hopeful that we'll get some.
Hopefully so. Well, we have a large pool to pick from, Graham, as we've established. The 16 participating teams have selected up to 60 players for their prelim rosters. Taylor, this is something we sort of had a chat about offline as well, but I can't get my head around why there is a need for a 60-player preliminary roster. It's something we discussed on USMNT Weekly previously as well. I just wonder who it's for.
Well,
is it for the players' benefit? Whose benefit is it for, though?
Well, that's a different question, but I think CONCACAF, it's a requirement for their tournaments, right? So that's why we had one before the Nations League in March.
Yeah.
So it's not just the US, it'll be Well, Canada have released theirs as well, I think, recently. Or Jesse Marsh was certainly given a press conference recently and talking about Tristan
He
Blackman.
was screaming about it, though, so I'm not sure if that was him releasing the roster or just being generally...
He was being ushered carefully and calmly by a CONCACAF official through the tunnel
still-
to the place that he would give the press.
He's still in SoFi Stadium.
They're still on a loop.
He's still doing laps.
But that's his suspension punishment.
Ryan, to actually answer your question, I have no idea. But I'm also not complaining about it because it's fun and you get to see. I think this came up in our Slack chat yesterday. It is an interesting way to think about how players are ordered in the mind of Mauricio Pochettino and his coaching staff, right? You get to see, 60 players is a lot of players, right? There are far more than 60 players who are sort of on the fringes of the national team. So this does give us a little bit of a deeper look. Is it like that useful? No, it's not. But it is interesting to me as someone who's way too in the weeds on all of this stuff, but maybe just perfectly in the weeds for the purposes of this episode, to see who is inside what tier and all of this. I think we're going to see a roster that sort of reflects some of that tiering as well.
I like having the information. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of it is, Ryan, but I, as a fan and an observer, like the information of knowing who's on the radar, right? Because that's one of the questions as a fan. You don't always have that information of, like, was this player close? Are they even talking about this player? And so that kind of gives an insight into that.
Yeah. I think there's a couple other things as well from a logistics standpoint. Obviously, then, if you are a player not on the provisional roster, you know that you can go about planning for a summer holiday because you won't be involved. If you are, there's also an awareness that you might be called in. And as I said in the intro, it has been the case that the U.S. has then sent players home after the group stage and called in players from that provisional roster. So you have to be listed in that 60-player list to be eligible to then come in as an injury replacement or as just an out-and-out replacement. I think also, with CONCACAF at least, there is always the possibility of dual nationals being called in. And that could be, it isn't the case here, but Richie Ledesma is on the U.S. roster, the provisional roster, is not on the Mexico provisional roster. But if he were, that then leads to the conversation about who is he going to represent, and you can sort of get those issues out of the way or attempt to get them out of the way. You can start with some of the visa processing or visa application and making sure that everybody's going to be kind of pre-cleared ahead of time. So it does give you some advantages and some opportunities with the logistics and organization of the tournament. I also think it does exactly what we're doing right now. It gives people something to talk about, and supporters of the teams. I think it's an indirect consequence, but it gives them something to talk about, something to be interested in. It gives them different ways of talking about different players, and it reminds players who might not otherwise be in that final squad that they're at the very least in the conversation. They are on the radar.
I thought you were going to say it reminds players that this is happening, that there's a tournament this
also
summer.
That. Oh, it's an odd year. Thank goodness. No, wait, what now? I have to... Okay, all right. Haiti it is. Saudi Arabia it is. Sure, let's do it.
It just sounds like a minor inconvenience at best for me. Like, there's 34 players from each squad who are going to be cut. That's 34 extra visas that, a lot of these nations are going to have to apply for all of these players. It's 34 players who probably want to book a summer vacation now but can't until they realise they've been cut. It's
Some of them can. Some of them can go ahead and book that hotel. I think.
Marlon
I think
Fossey, go ahead
fine.
and book that trip
Yeah.
to Cancun, pal.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like that. All right, well, let's get into that. The final 26-player rosters will be due by June 4th, so that's when we can definitely lock in that.
It will be tomorrow, though. We'll get a U.S. roster coming out later this week, and there can be chopping and changing to that before the Gold Cup, obviously. But we're going to learn some stuff about the U.S. well before then.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on that? Can players be called from outside the 60 between the two rosters? Is that a real answer? Or
You would be able to, because the U.S. is playing those friendlies against Switzerland and Turkey. You would be able to call in whoever you wanted for those friendly games, but you would have to draw specifically from the Gold Cup pool of players that's now been established for those games.
Right, got you.
And you can still call in players and not have them in the official squad and have them train with the team, but not make the matchday squad if you want to go that route as well. It's not confusing at all. Also, Stephen Graham can be added to the list of Grahams.
Ah, yes, of course. Yeah.
He's number one, baby. Surely.
He might be. Al Capone.
Don't worry about the phone guy.
Tommy? Come on.
Yeah.
Other
Al
things?
Capone?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so let's talk about this preliminary roster then. Joe, how excited are you looking at all of these 60 shiny faces? Obviously, we've mentioned that there are a few notable absences in those players who are committed to the Club World Cup. Are you feeling good about this group? Are you feeling like there's some shining stars who might rise above the pack?
Graham already mentioned his name. Alex Freeman is in this 60-man squad. I think he's probably going to be in that final squad. I don't know for sure, but that alone has me very excited about this, especially because Pochettino has said that he's probably not going to rush Sergiño Dest into a ton of minutes and is looking more towards the long term for Dest than he is necessarily for the short term. Here it is. Jeff Carlisle wrote it up well on Dest. I think this is relevant for Alex Freeman. Pochettino insisted that he won't be rushed into bringing Dest fully back and that he would, quote, take the best decision for him, thinking not only in today, but also in the future of him and in the future of the national team. That makes me think there might be some minutes available at right back. And Alex Freeman is in this squad. Alex Freeman is a far better soccer player than Joe Scally at a lot of things. I would love to see Alex Freeman get into this squad and actually play some minutes. Some other fun inclusions. Damian Downs is here, and Florian Plettenberg, who does some reporting over in Europe.
Plettigo.
Is that something I should be saying?
No, it's just that's his handle. I always
good.
find it funny when people reference Plettigo as if that's his actual name.
It's like a deep cover German outlet or something. You know? He's reported that Damian Downs has been called into the U.S.'s training camp roster ahead of the Gold Cup. That could be a lost in translation thing and just meaning that he's on the prelim roster.
Yeah.
I don't really know. It could be that he's going to make the next phase of this whole process. I'm not sure. But Damian Downs is on this list as another number 9 option. Richie Ledesma was already mentioned. I'm not sure if we'll see him in this roster, but I'd be fine with it. Quinn Sullivan, Seb Berhalter are both in this squad. We've mentioned Berhalter already. So there's some fun names. I don't know how much we're going to see those names, but there are really 2 starting spots up for grabs here. And sort of 3, if we think about Gio Reyna as... Okay. What's that, Taylor?
I was going to say, do you mean 2 starting spots like within the senior team or 2 starting spots within this particular iteration of the team?
Within
like
this
with
particular
no
iteration of the team, meaning that there's no Weston McKennie and there's no Tim Weah.
Gotcha.
Gio Reyna sort of, I think, was in a lot of people's minds a starter for this team when he was healthy. And the last window in March really just completely tore that apart, right? So Diego Luna, it seems like, has become that player. Maybe he's got to fight it out with Malik Tillman. They're totally different players. So I think Diego Luna's probably earned himself real minutes over the next, over this summer, I should say. But there's a midfield spot that's open for business, at least one, because Yunus Musa has also not covered himself in glory recently for club or country. And then there's another attacking spot that's up for grabs here. So, yeah, that for reasons that Graham mentioned about the intrigue around maybe getting some fresh looks at players, this is a fun thing. The challenge is, for most of the games the U.S. is going to play this summer, or at least half of them, thinking about the Gold Cup group stage, you're playing bad teams. Like Sebastian Berhalter is going to look good against Haiti. That's just how this is going to go. So it's going to take some nuance in how we break this all down, but there are fun players that are in this squad that maybe could do a little bit of the improving the overall team that we've been waiting for the last almost 4 years now.
Yeah, just talking about some of the omissions, there's a 12-player difference between this 60-man roster and the one for the Nations League, and if you go through each of those players, it makes sense. So Drake Callender isn't starting for Miami right now, but obviously can't play due to the Club World Cup. Ethan Horvath, and there we go. Ethan Horvath hasn't been playing at a high level. Cardiff have just been relegated from the Championship. Jackson Reagan is injured. Indiana Vasilev is in and out of the Philly team. Jesus Ferreira has had a pretty poor start to life at Seattle this season. Benjamin Kramaski will be with the U20s in June. Cade Cowell not playing much at the moment. Cole Campbell has been injured recently. I will say I would have liked to see Noake Banks on here, even though he has been out of the Augsburg team more recently. As injured players have come back into that team, he's fallen down the pecking order. But I still think he has got a high ceiling. He seems to be highly rated at Augsburg. He was on the 60-man roster for the Nations League, not on this one. And then you factor in some of the players coming back from injury as well. Dest, Balogun, Tillman, Haji Wright. I think it's a roster that largely selects itself. My main question from this, when I was trying to construct my roster, is wingers. Not a thing that conceptually is all that common in this roster. So I have my concerns over the makeup of this team, and I think, Taylor, you mentioned it offline yesterday when we were talking about this. Potentially leads to a wing-back system, but we'll see.
That would make some sense to me, given the lack of wide options, unless you want to try to kind of experiment and do different things out wide, because we would assume Pulisic will start in one spot. The other one is sort of wide open. Even with Tim Weah in there, maybe it's open, probably not. But I did sort of have a couple different looks to my roster in the end. I had him in a back 4 in a couple different ways, and then I did also have a back 3 as well, because I think that's possible. One question with some of the omissions you mentioned, Graham, obviously, Miami and Seattle, both Club World Cup, so you don't have any of those players involved in the provisional roster. Joe, if you were going to include one player from either of those teams into the team? Like, who do you think is closest out of those two? Because my assumption is it's Jordan Morris, given the lack of attacking options. But I welcome you to add in somebody else.
Yeah, Jordan Morris or Jesus Ferreira. Maybe even though Ferreira has been very, very poor so far for Seattle this year. Christian Roldan's another guy that comes to mind. He's been excellent, like really, really good for Seattle in a deeper midfield role than he'd ever played with the U.S. So maybe there's a guy who could have worked his way back into a team with no Weston McKennie in it. But my honest answer is I don't think any of those guys are very close. I think that's just the reality right now.
Right. No argument. There we are.
We're going to take, maybe? I know some people have mentioned his name, although anything defensive from Miami right now is probably not a great idea.
Pass.
All right, on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, more on this roster, and as hinted at, we're going to build out our starting 11s for this tourney. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. We are chatting about the US's prelim roster for the Gold Cup. Joe, before the break, we talked a little bit about Gio Reyna. Interesting situation he's got going on there at Dortmund. Obviously, he's presumably with the Dortmund squad that's coming over for the Club World Cup, and he could be an asset there because, at least from a media perspective, having an American player on your team when you come to America for a tournament is a bit of a boon for you. But is he going to play? Not sure. What's the situation there?
Yeah, this whole thing is bizarre. Maybe he's going to come over with Dortmund and just get dropped off in Columbus and stay in Columbus. I mean, nobody expects Gio Reyna to be a Borussia Dortmund player next year. I don't think anybody expects him to play a real role at the Club World Cup as well. Dortmund have granted Gio Reyna, according to Doug McIntyre, who does great stuff for Fox, they've granted him permission to find a new club. So that sort of makes me wonder, well, why wasn't Gio Reyna named to this Gold Cup preliminary squad? Why are we not going to see him for the U.S. at some point this summer? If Dortmund don't want him, what is the point of him sticking around with Dortmund and not getting a chance to showcase himself for the national team? Poch doesn't seem to want to use him, is the answer that I keep coming back to. And March made that clear, right? Where Gio Reyna was a DNP. He didn't play in the first game. He plays just a little bit off the bench in the second game. And Poch said after those Nations League games, quote, there's a, quote, need to be intelligent in the way that we are going to select the players and not just choose based on talent alone. We need to have the right characters to be really competitive. We also heard it from Poch prior to the March window that he wasn't planning on having Reyna in June at all. He said, March was going to be the only window because of the Club World Cup. And Poch had basically, it seemed like, just decided that he didn't want to bring in Reyna in June. And that hasn't changed. And all this is to say, I think Doug summed it up really well in a piece that he wrote for Fox recently. He ended a section on Gio in that story with this line, quote, would Pochettino pick Reyna for the Gold Cup even if he could? And that, coming from Doug, I think is extremely notable because Doug knows more about the inner workings of all this stuff than any of us on this show. Doug is extremely well plugged in. It would not surprise me if not seeing Gio this summer was the first of not seeing Gio Reyna more often under Mauricio Pochettino. So I just wanted to drop that. We can bookmark it later. Maybe it's going to be irrelevant come those September friendlies. Maybe it's not.
And what do you expect that relationship is, Joe? Is it a personality clash or is it a positional thing? What do we feel?
I mean, it could, maybe. Yes to all the above. I mean, Gio Reyna isn't running well these days after all of his injuries. He doesn't seem to mesh super well with teams as a general rule. So, I mean...
Bit of a problem for soccer players.
It is a bit of a problem. I mean, Pochettino talks about not just choosing on talent. Everybody can see that Gio Reyna is a very talented player. But he wants the right characters, and maybe there is a personality thing that doesn't mesh there. I don't know what it is, but this whole situation strikes me as not even odd because we have enough evidence to make this stuff seem sort of clearer these days, but notable that Doug wrote what he wrote and that Poch has done what he's done.
Yeah, one theory, as you've kind of referenced, Joe, is he's just way down the pecking order. Like, we have that evidence after March where Diego Luna is ahead of him. We barely see anything of Reyna in that window. And he's not playing for Dortmund. Like, he's been an unused sub in 8 of Dortmund's last 9 games. So it's very easy for Poch to justify.
They won most of those as well.
They did won. They've been in great form, Dortmund, since they exiled Gio Reyna. So it's very easy for Poch to reason, look, this guy's not playing. I don't really have much to base a decision off. The other theory, and this is completely hypothetical, I haven't seen any reporting, I definitely don't have any inside information, so I'm just speculating here. Transfer window opens on June 1st. This has been rumoured for a long time. It's been briefed for months that Gio Reyna is going to leave Dortmund at the end of the season. He has something lined up, and by not including him in the Gold Cup, this makes his integration to a new team this summer easier.
For sure.
Where if he is in the Gold Cup, if he's playing for the US after leaving Dortmund, or even if Dortmund are just like go and be free, he's not having a pre-season with his new team. He's not having those key moments with being integrated into a new group of players. So that was another thought that I had, is maybe this is actually with a view to helping Gio Reyna and his club situation.
I can see that for sure. The problem is, from a U.S. perspective, time's almost run out. Like Poch doesn't have more time to hang out with Gio in an extended camp and work him into a team. This is the window to do that, and if you're not going to do it in this window, then it's sort of making me think you're not really going to do it at all. So something to think about.
Yeah, interesting. Reyna's got the summer off, it sounds like. Maybe his parents had to send him to a summer camp of some kind. Oh, he doesn't play well with other kids, though, so maybe we'll have to work on that one. Taylor, any other omissions from this 60-person roster that we should cover off before we head to whittle it down?
Now, the Reyna one is really fascinating for so many different reasons, and I do hope that he gets the opportunity to find a club and find some joy playing soccer, because we haven't seen that from him in quite some time, and I would like to see it again. We haven't seen a lot from Ricardo Pepi in recent months because of his knee injury. He is not going to be recovered in time, so he is not on the provisional list. Daryl Dike has returned to playing, but is still new enough, and I think still relatively unproven enough that he is not on the provisional roster. Matt Miazga, maybe there's an argument he could be there, but he is still kind of not fully match fit. And then we've had some other players who maybe just haven't had great seasons, like Gagos Lenina, who isn't involved at present. Maybe will be in the future, but I doubt he is prior to the World Cup.
All right, very good. Let's whittle this 60-man roster down to a 26, shall we? Let's get to that. Why don't we start off, Graham, with the goalkeepers? We've got 6 goalkeepers here. 6 of them.
Bring them all, you cowards.
Should we bring them all? What do you think, Graham?
Still no place for Jonathan Klinsmann, who is doing quite well in Serie B. I saw his name bouncing around social media.
Is it Cesena?
Cesena, yep.
They're out of the playoffs, right?
Yes.
If you say so.
They are.
So yeah,
American
still no
owned,
place for. If we're getting a Berhalter back into this roster, we should get Klinsmann as well, just to balance things out.
So you just want a Nepo squad? We'll get Gio Reyna in there. We'll see who else can. Ian Harkes can jump in.
Alex Freeman, famously son of a Super Bowl champion, as Graham and I both know very well.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed White Lotus, and everyone in that was a Nepo baby. So let's just follow the same.
Who's Walton Goggins' dad then, Graham?
I don't know, but he did a great job. So yeah, 6 goalkeepers: Matt Turner, Zach Steffen, Patrick Schulte, Chris Brady, controversial from my point of view, Matt Fries and Diego Koken. Does anyone disagree that it's going to be Turner, Steffen and Schulte? I mean, nope. Koken you could maybe bring along as the understudy for the experience. Chris Brady's obviously doing well for Chicago Fire, but it seems like that's Poch's group at this moment, right?
Yep, I would take Matt Fries over Zach Steffen, but nobody's going to be surprised by that. The only thing I wanted to add on goalkeeper, because I think you laid it out well, Graham. Poch said this yesterday, quote, "I think it's true that Turner is not playing," and we were talking with him, and we translate the idea that for the future, in 1 year's time, I think he needs to find the way to compete every week. And then he went on to say it's open now in our mind. It's open for another player maybe to challenge in between the goalkeepers or in goal, and maybe to try to give the possibility to play another player. So opens the door slightly. Whether that's Poch just talking coach speak, could be. Whether he means it, could be.
All right. Taylor, you aligned on the 3 keepers there?
I think so. I'm not going to lie. There's a gigantic turtle trying to cross the street right in front of my home, and I'm having a hard time paying attention because
Taylor,
it is
where do you live, man?
so big, and genuinely, it's coming right for our driveway now. I don't know what to make of this. It's very distracting.
As if you have a driveway, Taylor. You live in a swamp.
And it needs to be drained. So, yeah, where do we land? We had Turner, we had Steffen, who Joe loved having on there.
And
then Schulte. Yep, that's where I am on the 3. I would love to see some experimentation. However, I don't feel like...
There's no way that just happened.
Dude, I know. I just looked out the window and I'm like, why is there a basketball coming towards my home? That's why. But I don't...
Taylor carrying a basketball?
It's really big.
Wow.
I like Diego Koken would be interesting, but that's really just like because why not? Let's see what happens. And I don't think we're in the why not let's see what happens stage of trying to prepare for a World Cup. I think we're in some of these guys have to be good, right? Let's figure out who's going to be the best, and then let's go from there.
All right, Taylor. Well, there's lots of really good names in the defensive group, many of whom can move faster than turtles across the street towards your home.
Theoretically.
Who are you thinking, Taylor, out of the myriad options in the defence from the 60-man roster?
Sure. I will start with center back because I do think fullback is an more interesting prospect than it's been. Joe, are we quietly deep at right back? Potentially, theoretically, all of a sudden? That came out of nowhere,
right back's been a pretty good spot for the U.S. for a
It
while.
went from 2 options to 4 in my mind. And with the idea that we could play in a back 3, I went with 4 center backs and then maybe a player that I think could do a center back job in a back 3.
Me too.
So I've got Mark McKenzie, Joe's favorite. I've got Tim Ream, and I've got Chris Richards. If we were going to go with a back 3, that would probably be my starting back 3. I'm going to add Austin Trusty into that mix, I think, because of the left-footedness. He could deputize for Mark McKenzie. And I'm going to count Joe Scally as a center back. I dropped Cameron Carter-Vickers to add in Joe Scally into this list. So those would be my 5 central-ish defenders.
I did the exact same thing, Taylor. I did leave CCV on the list over Trusty.
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
I added Scally to the equation. I forgot that Trusty was left-footed, and that actually does kind of sway me. But I guess you have Ream, who's left-footed, so it's not
Exactly,
the end of the world. But that's a fine shot. I honestly, I could not truly find it in myself to care about who the 4th center back is or who the 5th center back is. I went with Scally for right back reasons that we'll get to later. I would be a little surprised if we didn't see 5 pure center backs on this list, given that you have a 26-man roster that's 3 more than you had for the Nations League. It feels like it would be a somewhat natural thing to do to add another center back into this pool. Could be Miles Robinson, could be Trusty. Walker Zimmerman is on the prelim roster. He's still dealing with concussion symptoms after that collision he had in Charlotte. That was more than a month ago now. So concern there for Walker Zimmerman, and hope he's doing okay. And Tristan Blackman also made the cut. There's some rumblings around Canada looking to add Tristan Blackman at some point if they can get his citizenship in place. He's been really good, Tristan Blackman, in MLS this year. Like, maybe one of the few best center backs in the league. I would be very into the idea of seeing Tristan Blackman in this squad, but also I don't really think he moves the needle a ton. That's just me satisfying my desert sicko cravings right there.
Okay. Graham,
The turtle is in the driveway. The turtle is safe in the driveway. We are good to go.
Military code?
Taylor, is it right?
That's my way of saying Richie Ledesma has chosen the U.S.
Yes.
You've got to be careful because Taylor drives one of those Flintstone cars where you have to run with your feet underneath it. If he gets under the roller, that thing's going to be in trouble. Yeah.
I live in a swamp and I'm a caveman. Hurtful.
There's a lot of ideas being thrown around here. The swamp one is true though. Chris Richards, clearly I think is going to be included in this squad. The reason I mention him so prominently, I think it's worth persevering to see if the US can get Crystal Palace FA Cup winning Chris Richards. So I am very much in the mood to try the Ream Richards partnership again. Chris Richards hasn't been very good for the US, but there's that little bit of hope that it'll just click, and all of a sudden you've got a really well balanced, experienced pairing, one of whom is playing at a high level in England. Obviously, I've got Tim Ream in my roster because I've just mentioned him there. Mark McKenzie seems to be a favourite of Poch, has some form of partnership with Ream, so he's in there. CCV's in there for me as well, and then 5th centre back I could have flipped a coin. So I actually did go with Tristan Blackman for my fifth centre back, just for the sake of trying something different, and he has been very good for Vancouver. And I've got Joe Scally as well, but I did include him in my kind of fullbacks pool. But he's there.
No Tim Ream in your fullbacks pool, even though arguably one of MLS's greatest fullbacks.
Arguably is carrying an insane amount of weight in that sentence.
All right, Graham, who's in your fullbacks then?
Serginho Dest, I think, has the potential to completely change the dynamic for the US on the right side. Look, I know Poch needs to be careful. He's been out for such a long time, 13 months, but I do kind of hope we see a decent amount of Dest, because we need some evidence of how he's gonna change the dynamic on the right side for this team. So Dest is certainly in there. Anthony Robinson is obviously in there as well. We saw what happened when he wasn't available in the Nations League. Joe Scally, as I mentioned, and then Alex Freeman, huge potential. I'd like the Gold Cup to give a chance or two to like a few outsiders. Freeman should be one, in my opinion. He is incredibly well-rounded for someone who has just broken onto the scene. He's physical, he's got pace, he gets forward. Against Inter Miami at the weekend, there's one particular chance late on in the game where he dusts Jordi Alba down the right side and then picks out a pass centrally. And he's done that sort of thing throughout the season. He's got a good final ball. He's a good crosser. He's even scored with his head this season, getting into the box himself. So, yeah, I think I would like to see him given an opportunity in this roster.
Yeah, Alex Freeman is going to be a star. I mean, he already is. He's probably been the best right back in MLS this year. I would imagine this will be his last year in Major League Soccer, and he will go to a team that is very good, and he will play very well for that team. Like, I think Alex Freeman is incredible. So, Graham, you had Freeman, Dest, Scally, and Jedi? Were those your 4?
Yes.
Any concern about no backup left back? Because I would love to do the exact same thing. I have John Tolkien making my roster. Could be Caleb Wiley. You can flip a coin. I go Tolkien just because he's a different profile than Wiley, and a different profile than Jedi, I should say. But I would be more than thrilled to drop John Tolkien or Wiley from the roster and bring an extra center back if I could feel great about left back cover. Do you feel great about left back cover?
Dest was. I did have this thought, and I thought about having John Tolkien in there because I love my boy John Tolkien. But yeah, I thought Dest was my backup left back. And to Taylor's point earlier, the US is pretty strong at right back, so you can have Scally in there, you can have Alex Freeman in there. I felt pretty good about that.
Yeah, if Des was fully healthy and coming off of a full season, I would feel great about that. I'm struggling, and especially no Tim Weah means you don't have your winger who is probably best suited to deputize as an outside back. So I did go Tolkien mostly because I'm a coward. That's really what it was.
Where do you rate on the cowardice scale, Taylor? Who's in your fullback?
I had Jedi. I had John Tolkien. I had 5 fullbacks, not even including Joe Scally, because I also have Dest, I also have Freeman, and then I have Richie Ledesma for 2 reasons. One, last we spoke of him, had applied for his Mexican passport. He is a dual national. He's eligible to represent Mexico. I felt like that was done. I thought he was doing that because he didn't feel like he was part of the plans or hadn't been called in and was going to represent Mexico. Very noteworthy to me that he is not in Mexico's provisional roster. He is in the U.S. provisional roster after U.S. personnel, staff, coaches watched PSV, met with the players. I wonder if he was part of those conversations. So I would bring him in for that reason and basically see if he wants to accept. He might not. He might decline the call up because he wants to keep his options open. But I think it's worth considering because also, if we're talking about needing a backup for Serginho Dest and a person who can deputize in his absence or if he's not fully fit, that is the person who did that this whole season for PSV. So I feel like it makes sense to have Dest and his club deputy in the team, and we can see how Ledesma does, but then also see how Freeman does. I wouldn't want to just thrust him into the starting 11 and hope it goes well. And then I have Joe Scally as a center back, but he could also be a fullback, which I guess could mean that Dest could slide over if the situation requires. Maybe Ledesma could too. Maybe he can do that as well.
Nice. Joe, give us your picks for midfield, please.
All right, we're going to have to dissect this a little bit further. I'll start with the defensive midfielders. I don't know how you all divided your players up. If anybody else did that the exact same way, no one's giving me any verbal or physical cues, so I'm just
I like
keep
the
talking.
way they did with the provisional roster. All 1,000 central midfielders all just thrown in there together. No differentiation, just midfielders, and then the whole giant list. Yeah, I have more defensive, more attacking.
Cool. I'm just going to – I guess I'll just go through my whole list then. I've got Tyler Adams and Johnny Cardoso as my 2 defensive-minded midfielders. I have 3 guys who are probably more box-to-box Yunus Musa, Tanner Tessman, and Luca De La Torre. I think Luca De La Torre has earned his way back into the national team camp. I would bring him in over Sebastian Berhalter personally, but I'd be fine to see Seb Berhalter on this roster as well, even over someone like Tessman. I don't think Tessman is a lock by any means. And then I'm bringing 4 more attack-minded midfielders because, number 1, it's fun. Number 2, there are virtually no wingers in this team, as we've discussed and will continue to discuss. And there are players in that group that I think are interesting. So I'm bringing Diego Luna, who I think is a lock. Malik Tillman coming off of that title win. I'm still not there on Malik Tillman. His numbers are crazy in there. He doesn't have to do a whole lot. So I'm bringing him in just because, but I'm not all the way there. Quinn Sullivan and Brian Gutierrez round out my pure midfield group. Gutierrez has leveled up this year. He's having the best season of his career. He's playing the best ball of his career. He is more goal dangerous now than he's been. He looks stronger and better in terms of his press resistance. More active defensively. He's registering more defensive actions this year. He's buzzing around the field in a way he didn't used to. I like him a lot. I might even like him a little bit more than Quinn Sullivan, but Sullivan's had a great season, and I would enjoy seeing Quinn Sullivan in this group as well. I'm probably too heavy on those attack-minded midfielders. I don't think we're going to see all 4 of those guys in the same team. Probably it'll be 3 of them or something along those lines and an extra center back that I didn't want to bring or an extra defensive-minded midfielder. But those are guys that I would love to see, with apologies to Seb Berhalter for just missing the cut here.
Okay. Graham, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a good selection. I've gone for Tyler Adams, Johnny Cardoso, Tanner Tessman, playing in a double pivot for Lyon alongside a midfield anchor.
Is he playing? Just to be clear, I feel like every time I've checked on him, he has been out of the team or missing for personal reasons, and that is why I left him off. But he may well have finished the season starting the last 5, and I just...
He did start in the last 2 games for Lyon.
Yeah, he joined in January, right? Like there's a move that happened or was that last summer? I can't quite remember. But he's got 1,200 minutes in Ligue 1, 500 in the Europa League. So it's decent selections or decent sample size. And yeah, he's started the last couple of games. The point I was making was Lyon's on a very simplistic read of Lyon's system. It's a similar system to the way the US have set up under Pochettino, where you'd be playing alongside an anchor, so that'd be Tyler Adams. It's Matic for Lyon. He's then playing in behind a floating number 10, which will probably be Diego Luna for the US at this tournament, and it is Ryan Cherki for Lyon. So he's in my team. I've gone for Seb Berhalter. That might be coloured by the fact I am in the mood for just something different, some chaos. And Joe's argument on Guti made me kind of think again about the selections I've gone from my attacking midfielders. But I've got Yunus Musa in there, I've got Diego Luna, I've got Malik Tillman. I've gone for Brandon Aronson.
Yeah, you have.
Just because
you're a hero.
Because you're ready to be hurt
that might be part of it. I don't know who I'm playing out wide if I'm not bringing Brendan Aronson into this team. And of course, he was left out of the Nations League squad, so that possibly says something about how Poch views him.
Was Tessman as well? That's another one I can't remember. I feel like
Tessman was in that team.
Okay,
he was in there but Aronson certainly wasn't in there. I remember that being a big talking point. Maybe the fact he wasn't in the March camp lifts his stock because it went so badly in March. So I don't know. I don't feel great about Brandon Aronson. I would much rather the novelty of having someone like Brian Gutierrez or Quinn Sullivan to have a look at. But in terms of actually building a team to put on the pitch, I think I'm having Aronson in there.
I like it.
What do you think?
Yeah, a lot of overlap for me. Adams and Johnny, Yunus Musa, Tillman, Luna, and then I had Luca De La Torre as well.
Yes.
I really enjoyed what I've seen from him, and I think he has earned that look and that call up. And I'm not sure anybody else has really challenged him or is head and shoulders above him. You could make an argument for Tessman. I'm surprised no one made an argument for Jack McGlynn. I thought there'd be some of that, but alas. So I'll go Luca De La Torre. And then Brendan Aronson was my other one, more in more attacking midfield spots, but maybe also out wide as well. That is an I'm ready to be hurt again sort of situation. But for him having helped get promotion back to the Premier League, for him being heavily involved for Leeds this season, playing plenty of minutes, scoring a few goals in there, I feel like he deserves some more looks at national team level.
There we go. All right, we need to take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll build out the rest of these rosters, maybe have a look at the 11s too, and a look ahead to this summer of games. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. We're building out our rosters for the Gold Cup. Graham's here. He's going to tell us about his forward line and his wide attackers. Let's hear it.
The wide attacker section will be
all of them
short and sweet.
Question mark and shrug emojis.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I've got Christian Pulisic in there.
Hey.
Yeah, he makes it. I've gone for Haji Wright.
Correct.
He is back playing for Coventry City. He can play either side. He's good in transition. He's got goal threat. Can play as a centre forward, although to be honest, with the players that I'm bringing, I'm hopeful that he won't need to, but he brings you that versatility. So I'm bringing Haji Wright. And then that's kind of it for my wingers that I'm bringing. I'm hopeful that Brendan Aronson can fill in the wide positions. Maybe we can go to a back three and we get Dest as a wing back and Jedi on the other side. But I don't feel great about that selection. But I equally don't feel great about the other options on the roster. I don't feel like I'm leaving out anyone obvious by just bringing those two and Brendan Aronson along.
I think you could have Aronson wide, maybe Luna could shift into the wide space on occasion, but I think Gutierrez can play wide as well. But ultimately, I think it's Pulisic and Wright as maybe your obvious wide options if you want to have people there. But I think you reach a point where is it better to stick with the shape that we expect them to stick with, and then you just put in the best possible person and hope that works? Or is it better to change the look, given other personnel elsewhere. And if you are able to start Serginho Dest in the knockout round, and if you're able to start Jedi Robinson, I would argue you give them each just kind of command of the wide areas. You move more of your attacker central, and that's where maybe you have more of a front two, and that's where the 3-5-2 I think makes a lot of sense to me, or even like a 3-4-3. But with it being sort of two central playmakers and one attacker ahead of them. And so a lot of my shapes ended up with sort of Diego Luna in the right half space, Christian Pulisic in the left half space, and then Folarin Balogun up top starting. That is kind of what I ended up with Jedi and Dest wide. And then I actually ended up starting, jumping ahead a bit, Johnny and Tyler Adams as my two kind of defensive midfielders who can then do the defensive covering to the left and to the right if you need to with those fullbacks advanced. So I kind of ended up going with not having a right-sided, like, wide attacker at all, but with my wingers, it is Pulisic, it is right, and then I had Gutierrez in there, but also listed as an attacking midfielder too.
Yeah, I think the point, Taylor, you made about Diego Luna popping up in the half spaces is correct, because we've already seen it with the U.S., right? When Luna plays, he's playing in the half spaces, even though he's like sort of a nominal winger-ish in that game against Canada. I think that the U.S. misses Tim Weah is a huge miss, because Weah and McKennie both are impact players for the U.S. This team is worse for not having both of those guys. At the same time, I sort of feel like it's going to be next man up in the wide attacking areas, and that because Pochettino and almost every coach on the planet is playing somebody in that half space anyway, and it's oftentimes a winger tucking inside, it's not a huge deal. Like, it makes the U.S. worse, but I don't think you have to rewrite the entire tactical framework of your team to deal with the fact that you don't have Tim Weah. Yes, he is the winger who usually hugs wide, which does change the positioning of the fullbacks. But now that Dest is back in the team, that might change anyway with how that right side is going to be constructed. So I brought Pulisic, Haji Wright, and Alex Zendejas. You don't know if Zendejas is going to be available because he could be in the Club World Cup with Club America. We won't know that for another 10 days, which is super helpful, I'm sure, for the U.S. in terms of roster planning. And then I went with Balogun and Sargent as just two number 9s. You could convince me to bring a third one in there somewhere. I'm not moved by any of the other options in this group. I'm not really even moved by those options at the moment.
Incorrect. You are, in fact, moved by Damian Downs. You didn't know it, but you
unfortunately.
Are you really not? That doesn't. You don't have any
10
level
goals
of excitement
in the second Bundesliga?
I mean, Cole don't score a lot.
How many
of goals,
did you score, Joe?
Good point. Good point. Just
How many did Balogun score, Joe?
I mean, I'd be fine with Damian Downs in the U.S. roster, but I would only be fine with it. Like, it's a speculative call-up, and that's totally fine. But am I trying to give minutes to Damian Downs over Folarin Balogun right now? Personally, no, I'm not. So it's fine to have Downs in the roster, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see him in this group and we see one fewer attacking midfielder. In fact, I think that's quite likely. But that you need Haji and 3 pure number 9s in this team, like, I'm just not buying that. Like, that feels like a waste of resources in some ways. So you call up Downs because you think he's got something that you want to explore. And I think you can also just call him up later and have the exact same impact, more or less.
Joe, what is it about his 1 goal and 1 assist since February that isn't instilling confidence in you about Damian Downs? I mean, that is the confusing thing.
Nothing has changed. I mean, is it confusing? Like, Downs he's a high potential-ish potential young player with a lanky frame who has some really fun traits where he can run in behind. He's got good strength, even though he still needs to work on some of his hold-up play. He's a fun profile of a player. I can see why he's on the radar for the U.S. He's just not ready, in my mind, for like big minutes or probably any minutes with the national team.
Yeah, agreed. I think what I mean is that when you say 10 goals, 3 assists over 29 matches, it's not the greatest return to your point, but you want that to be spread out a bit. And I think what I'm saying is that, like, he's got 10 goals, and then you look and it's like, well, he had 9 before February and 1 after February.
Yeah,
that's not really what you're looking for. You want it like, oh yeah, he missed some time with injury, then he came back and he set the world alight and scored 2 more goals to round out the season. Like, that didn't really happen. So it is definitely more of a, let's see what this guy can offer call up and hope it's something. But I did have him as my third striker.
And that's totally defensible. Like Pat Ajiman is another one who has got a fun profile. He's been bad this year with Charlotte, but Charlotte are down bad hard right now anyway. Brian White has been scoring a bunch of goals, and I think would be probably the most game-ready option to be in this group behind Sargent and Balogun.
Why doesn't he do it for me, Joe? Why doesn't Brian White? Because you're totally right.
Brian White is a service-dependent striker, and the U.S. don't feed their strikers because they don't have a lot of other attacking talent. So you look at someone like Brian White, and you think, is he going to put up numbers with the U.S.?
Interesting.
Maybe not, right? Balogun has been such an intriguing player because he can create his own shot, and that's something that is pretty unique about him in the context of the U.S. pool. Even though he has not been consistently available or effective when he's been on the field with Monaco, he still can do things that no other striker in this pool can do. To go back to Downs just very, very quickly.
Joe, would it help if I told you, FBref tells me that Damian Downs led the Zweite Bundesliga in own shots created percentage
That's
statistic?
Great. Yeah, and that's fine. I hope we see more and more of that from Damian Downs.
That sounds like a made-up metric.
I was not really sure that FBref has Zweite Bundesliga data now anyway, but I was trying to yes and.
Thank you.
Effectively, the choice I made was, do I want to bring Quinn Sullivan or Brian Gutierrez, like whoever those guys you think is fourth of the list of guys that I named in that attacking midfield spot behind Luna and Tillman? Do I want to bring the bottom guy of that group, or do I want to bring a third number 9 who's not going to play? And for me, the choice is pretty easy, especially with Haji Wright involved. But I don't really think there's a wrong answer because it just doesn't matter that much.
All right. We've got a few minutes left on this episode. Let's try and see if we can get some 11s nailed down. Taylor, you hinted at yours a little bit. Obviously, we've probably got 2, maybe 3 first-team slots to substitute out for some big players here. So what are we thinking?
Yeah, so I'll give you 2 different ones. With the back 3, I had Stefan in goal. Eyebrows. McKenzie, Ream, Richards, Adams, Musa, Diego Luna, with Jedi and Dest as your wingbacks, and then Pulisic and Balogun as your kind of consistent attackers. And then in a back 4, it's pretty... Strangely, actually, there is a little bit of a difference, I guess. I'm not sure how, but there is, because I ended up starting... Oh, because I lost a center back. So back 4 would be Ream and Richards, with Jedi and Dest as your fullbacks. I still had, as I said, Johnny and Tyler Adams as my 2 kind of deeper midfielders, with Johnny on the left, Adams on the right, so that they can help out if and when Dest and Jedi are caught out of position. You have some level of defensive cover without having one of the central midfielders become another center back, and then that whole kind of production passing mechanism breaks down. Malik Tillman would then be my third central midfielder in there, with Pulisic in the left half space, Diego Luna in the right, and Florin Balogun up top.
Both sound quite viable. Which one do you prefer?
I think the back 3 would be interesting because I tend to think there are very nuanced reasons to prefer a back 3 over a back 4. Ultimately, for me, a back 3 is a system, maybe incorrectly, but the way I perceive it is a system in which we don't have 2 really good center backs, but we've got 3 pretty decent ones who can all together kind of make up for the deficiencies of the other. So let's throw 3 in there, and you have 3 kind of staying more central. I think it kind of clogs up the middle. So I'd like to see that back 3 just as an experimentation and see if it can help create for the United States or help create stability while still allowing them to commit numbers to the attack.
All right. Coach Graham, lay it down on us.
So I've gone with Matt Turner in goal. My back 4 of Dest, Robinson, Richards and Ream. I don't know what has come over me, but when I look at that back 4, I'm like, oh, that's all right, actually. I mean, I guess Dest was missing for March, Robinson was missing for March, and Richards, we've talked about recently about how good he's been for Crystal Palace, so it seems like his stock is pretty high. But looking at that back 4, I feel all right about that back 4 all of a sudden.
Graham, I think the FA Cup final did a lot for me, and I don't think we actually ended up talking about him much in the weekend review section of that one, but I thought he was excellent, and I thought he was really reliable in that he did some very smart things with his passing. He was using his left and his right to play the ball up, but find teammates, but a lot of it was just really solid decision making that didn't give any opportunities to Manchester City, and it's heading it clear when he needs to, but bringing it down when he needs to, and shepherding his attacker 1v1 into less threatening areas. I just thought it was a comprehensively strong performance from him that we haven't seen as much at times in the Premier League this season. So yes, I am much higher on Chris Richards right now than I was maybe a month or 2 ago. Ditto for the fullback pool.
Yeah, and that's why I say I think it's worth persevering with Richards, just on the chance that you get that Crystal Palace player, that you unlock that player, and all of a sudden that is something that moves the needle for the US. So that's my back 4. My midfield double pivot, I guess if you want to call it that, Tyler Adams and Yunus Musa I've gone for. That could also be Tanner Tessman for me. It could honestly be Seb Berhalter. I'm in the mood to try something different. What I like about Seb Berhalter is he is an 8. If you were to ask me what is the profile of player the US is missing in that midfield unit, it is like a box-to-box 8 who has goal threat, high work ethic. So he ticks all those boxes. It's just whether he is performing at a high enough level to make an impact international level, a World Cup for the US. But honestly, I'm open to the idea of trying him in there. And then I've got Diego Luna as my number 10. I've got Pulisic, and I've gone for Haji Wright, but that could be... I mean, it's not his best position. He's played more centrally for PSV, but it could be Malik Tillman. We've seen him. Obviously, he's got that versatility. Maybe we just ask, if he's playing on the left, we just ask Jedi to get high and wide, which he likes to do. We push Tillman into the half spaces. And then I've got Balogun as the starting centre forward.
I like that, Graham. Sorry for not paying attention to my own starting 11. When I said my back three, did I say Yunus Musa or Johnny Cardoso was starting? I had Johnny in a back four. But
I think it was Musa that you said.
Okay, cool. Because I think that was the other point, is that with a back three, I'm more comfortable having Yunus Musa playing centrally, likely giving the ball away on a dribble, likely giving a pass away, but then at least you have numbers behind him if you do. So I think it's a less risky proposition with three center backs behind him. So that's my other argument for Yunus Musa. I like it, Graham.
All right. Last but not least, Joe Lowery. Please give us your 11.
Same back four plus goalkeeper as Graham. Then I've got Tyler Adams, Luca De La Torre. I'm all in, man. I think De La Torre... I would play Yunus Musa behind De La Torre right now in a heartbeat. I think De La Torre has been better. De La Torre, and then I would have either Brian Gutierrez, or Malik Tillman in my other midfield spot. I can kind of go either way. I have a slight preference towards Gutierrez. Again, more along Graham's I'm in the mood for change vibe.
You just calling him Guti. Be real.
It's fun. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Malik doesn't quite have, it's just not the same. Like Guti's it's a different level. But I'm fine either way. And I think Malik Tillman has warranted another look with the U.S., but he hasn't shown it with the United States so far. So there's that. I've got Pulisic on one wing, Luna on the other, tucking inside certainly, and Balogun up top. I think all of these lineups are totally defensible. Like, I think these are all realistic, easy for me to say, lineups for the United States. I'm been consistent in my thinking on a back three not being my preferred option, because I don't think it's an area of strength for the U.S. I think you get more out of an extra midfielder than you do out of an extra center back. But Taylor, you made some good points there, and I think it's totally possible we see something like that from the U.S. this summer, especially with a lot of games coming pretty thick and pretty fast. The other two things I want to add very briefly. We all had Luna in all of our lineups, right? Taylor, he was in both of yours, is that right? He was in Graham's, he was in mine. I think he's going to be in Pacha's first choice lineup this summer, and that's fun. Like, if I'm trying to tell Joe from an hour ago about why he should be excited about the U.S. this summer, Luna being in line for a real role, no Gio Reyna, no Weston McKennie, that's two historically important players for the U.S. in similar areas to Luna. Luna's going to eat minutes this summer. I'm pretty confident of that. And that's exciting. And there's some potential there to be explored if you're looking for a player who's going to make the U.S. better than they were in 2022, because basically no one has emerged in that group. Luna is a real option. Balogun is the other one, but Balogun has stalled in a way that Luna has progressed. And the only other thing, it was mentioned already in passing, but neither Jedi Robinson, nor Sergiño Dest were available for the March window. That's a huge change. Like, getting those two top-end starters back in this team, or even if it's not Dest, if it's Alex Freeman, I'm totally down to throw Alex Freeman to the Wolves. The Wolves are Trinidad and Tobago. Like, let's get this dude on the field if Dest can't go. He's really good. Dest is a better player at this point in a lot of ways, but the U.S. is going to be strong at fullback in a way that they haven't been for months, and that makes this summer exciting as well, because it's going to give us a closer look at the best version of this U.S. team, even though you're not going to have two key starters in this group. So there are reasons for optimism. There are reasons to think that the U.S. should be playing much better ball than they did in the last window, and we're going to find that out against a couple of European teams at the beginning of June.
There you go. You mentioned Joe from an hour ago there, Joseph Lowery, and I feel like we've been on a journey in the room here from slightly cautious about the Gold Cup, and now there's positivity in the room. So I'm feeling good. I like the sound of these lineups.
Yeah, it's like hopping around the Monopoly board. Like, eventually you're going to pass go, and at that point you're going to feel a lot better than you did $200 earlier, you know?
Yeah, no straight to jail for us. Wonderful stuff. And that is USMNT Weekly. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your services here. I'm glad the turtle is safe. Yabba dabba doo, thank you.
Yabba dabba doo, thank you. The turtle is indeed safe, and I still can't tell if I'm excited about this team because I'm excited about this team, or because I stared at them for way too long and I've convinced myself they're going to be good. But either way, bring on the Gold Cup.
Why not both?
¿Por qué no los dos?
See. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And thank you, Joe Lowery.
Call up the turtle, baby. Call him up. Put him in goal.
Yes. Very, yes.
They wouldn't shoot on the turtle, would they? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, looking like a turtle's worked for Kylian Mbappe, so
there you go. Are turtles effective at playing out from the back, though?
Doesn't matter.
Discuss
Hope it long,
that on a
lad.
future episode.
are the US.
Match made in heaven. There we go. Listener, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this episode. We'll be back on the feed very shortly. But for now, bye.